Hello and welcome to Individual Soul, the podcast. I hope you are all having a lovely day, week, or month. And today, on episode 10, I will be speaking to you about the hard truths about running or operating a business. So, within today's episode, I'm going to be talking about 3 different things you should be keep aware of before and while operating a business. So the first one being, you need to have a very solid plan. The second one being, you have to have some financial management. Super important. And the third one being, I think this one's quite important, other than the financial management, but you have to be okay with the hustle. And we'll dive into that a bit later on. So I will be talking about all the experiences that I've gone through. And I hope to anybody listening who is wanting to start a business can take some notes and really listen to what I have to say, because I've had conversations with many people who are wanting to start a business, and they come to me and ask me, so how did you start? How did you go about certain things, and what should I ensure that I do so I don't make any mistakes? And I love helping everybody. I won't deny it. I love helping. So that's why I'm doing today's episode. So the first one being, have a very solid business plan. I'll give you an example when I started Individual Soul as a clothing brand. I did a tremendous amount of research into it. I did a lot of research into there was either screen printers or organizing something overseas as well, which I can be open and honest with you all about it, that when I did it overseas, and this was during year 12, I lost a lot of money because I was getting samples and they just were not adding up, and they were horrible. So I wasted a lot of money there, and that taught me a lesson to not go overseas. But I do know now a lot of people with clothing brands are going overseas. You just have to do a lot of research about it. The other example I have is coming up with the name Individual Soul, which I'm super grateful that I do have the name. Took me about a year, as simple as it is, Individual Soul. It took me a year to come up with the name. And why I love it so much is because whenever I hear somebody say individual within like a sentence or whatever they're talking about, I instantly always think of Individual Soul, because it resonates with me. And the more I build up this brand with the podcast and also with the clothing, I hope that whenever anybody hears individual, it resonates with them. Individual Soul. So individual resonates with Individual Soul. It is important, and this is one thing that I've realized, is people like to think, you know what, I have an idea and I'm going to run with it. There's a lot of planning that needs to go within a business, because you're essentially looking at this for the long term, but you're also spending a lot of time, a lot of energy and money going on with the venture that you want to do. So you need to make sure that you're passionate about it as well. And I will speak about being passionate about a business a bit later on, for the third example that we'll talk about, which is being okay with the hustle. So business plan, I want to wrap it up with things do not come easily. If doing a business was so easy, I think everybody would be doing a business. So you need to understand that you're not going to come up with you could come up with the idea straight away, but then the planning process takes months, maybe even years, before you actually execute it. And you need to just make sure that you're okay with it before you bring out the service or the product, and that you're 100% happy with it, or maybe 95% happy, because in reality, you're never going to be happy with whatever you're doing. I don't know. That's just my perspective on it, whilst running businesses. I want to dive into financial management. And for anybody that knows me, knows that I am extremely on top of money and making sure that everything runs smoothly. So as I briefly spoke about before, when I operated Individual Soul as a clothing brand, I wasted a lot of money overseas. And I think I'll be truthfully honest with you, one reason as to why the clothing didn't work out is because, one, I was not passionate about it, but two, I wasn't thinking. Obviously, I was a lot younger then, and I've gained a lot more experience, but also knowledge, but I wasn't thinking financially. I wasn't separating my personal money with my business money. And that's super important. When you start a business, you need to ensure that the business's money is its own money and your personal money is your own money. This is a great example because I run, obviously, Collectors Collectibles, which is my collector's business. As you can see behind me, I have a ton of comics, but I obviously still work a somewhat 9 to 5 during the week, which allows me to accumulate money for my personal self, whereas I still run this business, which allows me to keep refueling the business with more merchandise stock. And whether you want to start a business selling a product or you want to sell a service, the same thing applies. You're still going to be, doing your 9 to 5 still, or maybe something else. This is while you're beginning. You'll do a 9 to 5. And then let's just say you're doing a service. First thing that pops into my head, because obviously my partner is a speech pathologist, is speech pathology. Let's just say you are seeing clients. That money goes towards sort of expenses that you'll need to use throughout that service business, which is maybe new books or more resources, etc. And then the 9 to 5 job allows you to have the money for yourself. Don't want to dive into that too deeply, but I do also want to bring up this, just speaking about the financial aspects of a business. A lot of people, when they begin a business, they say, oh my God, this is an example as well. Oh my God, I made $5,000 in the month. I'm wrapped. However, that $5,000 is only revenue. The long term when it comes to a business is not how much revenue you make, it's how much profit you accumulate. And a lot of people get this confused. Businesses could easily say they're worth millions of dollars. They make $1 million of revenue, but how much profit do they make? Revenue is the money you make. Let's be very clear about that. Revenue is the money that you make. However, profit is basically the simplest way I can explain it is revenue take away expenses, or incoming money take away outgoing money gives you your profit. So at the beginning, you need to ensure that obviously you're making profit. However, shout out to me going to uni, they always told us that businesses at the beginning usually take around 5 years, give or take, to start noticing some major profit. And I can agree with that, just purely because with the collectibles business that I have started, I'm now starting to notice a lot more money coming in while I start to creep up to that 5 years. So it's a whole process. I want to speak to you about being okay with the hustle. Many people starting a business think it's sunshine and rainbows. They think, oh my God, this person is making so much money. The harsh reality is, how many hours are they putting into that so much money? People with services, selling a product, clothing, whichever business that you want to start with, takes a lot of time. Why I believe so many people begin clothing brands is because they think it's a very quick flip. That's what I thought when I first began my first proper business selling clothes. I clearly wasn't passionate about it, so clearly didn't work, but I put a lot of effort into it. Not a lot of people saw the hard work, the sleepless nights, the basically 60 hours a week on top of a 9-to-5 job and university on top of that. There's a lot of hard work that goes towards it, and people need to understand that they need to be okay with putting in these hours and making, keyword of today, sacrifices. People need to understand that in order to create a successful business, you have to make sacrifices. Super important, because that's one thing that when I speak with people, I give them advice, and I always end up talking to my brother or my sister, and I say, I've given these people advice, but I guarantee you it's either going one ear out the other, or they begin, and because they're not really dedicated towards it, or they cannot be bothered researching, or they think the sacrifice is too much for them, they never succeed. You have to make sure that you're okay with the hustle, because with anything, with life, it's a hustle. You need to work hard. In order to become successful, you need to work hard. The more money you make, the more time you're spending, whether that be doing emails, whether that be packing orders, whether that be managing people. You have a lot more added stress the more money you make. You have a lot more complaints, you have a lot more demands. So people need to take that into consideration when they want to start a business, because there's a lot of different aspects, and I'm only raising 3 for today's episode. But it's just very important that I speak this out, because I don't want people wanting to start a business and thinking, their shades on, and only seeing the positive sides of owning a business, because in reality you should be viewing the harsh truths of owning a business, because in reality it's not easy, because as I said before, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And weirdly enough, before I thought about doing this episode, on my CoStar, the CoStar app that gives you daily quotes or reminders, it actually said, and this was on my screen and I laughed about this, it said there is value in the process. So being okay with the hustle is the same thing with being okay with the process, but making sure that, and I can say this with experience, if something doesn't work out and you put all this time and effort into it, I assure you that that time and effort will not go unnoticed, and that will carry on to whatever you do on your next venture. So everything you learn, you take on to your next venture. I love talking about this stuff. So I do hope that this episode gave you some knowledge or some notes that you can take down if you are wanting or thinking about starting your own sort of business. And yes, I hope you all have a lovely day. Make sure to like, subscribe, or rate the podcast. Take care.